Think Bitcoin is a scam, only for criminals? Useless in the real world? Well, you've been lied to. Today, we're breaking down the 5 biggest myths about Bitcoin that most people still believe. Stick around, this might just change your perspective forever. Myth 1. Bitcoin is only used by criminals. How many times have you heard, Bitcoin is just for criminals, it's the currency of the black market? It's probably the most common myth out there. But here's the truth. Bitcoin isn't some shady underworld currency. Yes, it offers privacy in transactions, but it's not totally anonymous, it's pseudonymous. That means every transaction is publicly recorded on the blockchain for anyone to see. It's actually more traceable than cash. Every single Bitcoin movement leaves a digital footprint. Let's get some numbers straight. Less than 1%, specifically only about 0.34%, of Bitcoin transactions have been linked to illegal activities. To give you some perspective, the United Nations estimates that about 2 to 5% of all global GDP is connected to illicit activity through fiat currencies like cash. That's way higher than Bitcoin. And here's the kicker: major legit companies like Microsoft, Tesla, and even PayPal have integrated Bitcoin. It's being used by businesses, individuals, and even governments now. So no, it's not just for criminals unless you think Tesla is up to no good. Myth 2. Bitcoin has no real value. Next up, one of the biggest misconceptions out there: Bitcoin has no real value. People say this because Bitcoin isn't tied to a physical asset like gold or backed by a government. But here's what they don't get. Bitcoin's value comes from its scarcity and its demand. It's just like how gold has value. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins, ever. That's written into the code and no one can change it. Compare that to the dollar, which can be printed in unlimited amounts. Inflation, anyone? So why do people call it digital gold? Think about it. In times of economic uncertainty, when fiat currencies are losing value, people look for a store of value, something that doesn't depreciate over time. Traditionally, gold has been that safe haven, but Bitcoin is quickly taking on that role in the digital age. And there's more to it. Bitcoin operates on blockchain technology. It's decentralized, meaning there's no bank or government controlling it. The network is secure and transactions happen without the need for middlemen, like banks. In a world where we're used to paying fees for every little thing, Bitcoin eliminates a lot of those costs. That is real value. It's a currency built on trust, just like the dollar or euro, but with a key difference. Bitcoin has a fixed supply, and it's controlled by code, not by human whims. Myth 3. Bitcoin is too volatile to be a serious investment. Here's a myth that scares a lot of people away from Bitcoin. It's too volatile, I'll lose all my money. And you know what? Yes, Bitcoin is volatile, no denying that. You've probably heard stories of people getting rich, people losing money. The value swings up and down. But here's where you need to change your mindset. Look at the bigger picture. Back in the early days of companies like Amazon or Apple, their stock prices were also incredibly volatile, but if you stuck with them, you'd be sitting on a small fortune today. The same applies to Bitcoin. Over the past decade, Bitcoin has outperformed nearly every other asset. Stocks, bonds, real estate, none of them have matched Bitcoin's growth. But you might still be thinking, volatility makes it too risky. Well, Bitcoin is still in its growth phase, and as more, we're talking banks, hedge funds, and even governments, are getting involved, that volatility is decreasing. The more people who believe in Bitcoin, the more stable it becomes. Yes, it's a wild ride, but for those who are willing to hold on for the long term, the rewards can be huge. Myth 4. Bitcoin is just a bubble that will burst. Now, this one's been thrown around for years. Bitcoin is just a bubble waiting to pop. And sure, Bitcoin has seen some dramatic rises and falls in price, but here's what bubble critics don't understand. Bitcoin's value is based on real fundamentals. It's not some random speculative asset with no backing. Bitcoin's worth comes from its scarcity. Remember, only 21 million can ever exist. Its decentralized technology, and its growing adoption. People, businesses, and governments are starting to build entire ecosystems around Bitcoin. That's not bubble behavior, that's an emerging financial system. It's happened before with technologies like the internet and smartphones, where early adopters saw huge swings in value. But in the end, those who stuck with it were part of something revolutionary. Let me break it down even more. Bitcoin has been declared dead hundreds of times by the media. Every time the price drops, people shout, "The bubble's bursting!" But here we are. Bitcoin is stronger than ever. It's been through multiple corrections and it bounces back. And now, entire countries like El Salvador are adopting Bitcoin as legal tender. That's not something that happens with a bubble. That's real adoption. Myth 5. Bitcoin is too complicated to use. Alright, myth number 5. Bitcoin is too complicated for the average person to use. This was probably true back in the early days when you had to know how to code or mine to get involved. But today, using Bitcoin is as simple as using Venmo or PayPal. There are apps like Cash App, PayPal, and Coinbase that let you buy, sell, and spend Bitcoin with just a few clicks. It's designed to be user-friendly. Even grandma could figure it out. And with the rise of the Lightning Network, Bitcoin transactions are becoming faster and cheaper. Imagine sending money anywhere in the world instantly, with barely any fees. That's the power of Bitcoin today. And we haven't even scratched the surface of how easy it's becoming to integrate Bitcoin into everyday life. You can use Bitcoin to pay for your coffee, buy goods online, and even invest in long-term savings plans. The myth of Bitcoin being too complex, that's a thing of the past. So let's recap. Bitcoin isn't for criminals. It has value, its volatility is part of its growth, it's far from a bubble, and it's easier to use than ever before. The myths, destroyed. If you found this video helpful, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. And remember, always do your own research before making any investment decisions. Thanks for watching.